Okay, hey everyone, welcome to an episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. To have a really cool review for you guys from the brand Nomadic Watches. They are a popular Belfast based Irish microbrand, pairing modernized takes on classic themes and Swiss movements. Now, in terms of type of watch, this is an everyday adventure watch, which has been really popular as of late. And some key characteristics and design, which you're looking for something within this space. Of course, you're going to find something that is sporty, legible, and tough. This is their Turas 914 in the Landfall colorway, and they describe it as an elegant yet weighty and robust expedition watch, crafted from fine brushed stainless steel, powered by a Swiss movement, and proudly built in Belfast. These go for $13.45 direct, and that is at the time of filming. Of course, depending on when you watch this video, as well as even if you watch it, relatively recently from the date of the release, there's also typically, since this is a brand that is not, headquartered out of the US, typically their pricing is going to be based off of the current exchange rate. Now, in terms of this particular sample, it was kindly lent in by Nomadic. So I do appreciate that. This is a brand that I've kind of had my eye on over the years, and I'm excited to finally get one of their watches here in the studio so I could spend some time with it and let you guys know my thoughts on the value proposition, the fit, the finish, the design, and just the overall theme of Nomadic Watches as a brand. So with that said, let's go and zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, so, obviously it's very robust in terms of its design language, as well as its tolerances and fit and finish. They weren't kidding when they said that this is something that is weighty and robust feeling. This is no lightweight. This isn't some ultra thin dress watch. This feels very much like a watch for your everyday adventure. Now, in terms of the dimensions, 39.5 millimeters in diameter, which is what I get from my own calipers, 11.7 millimeters thick, and then 47.7 millimeters lug to lug, full 316L stainless steel construction, brushed with a couple of high polished accents, which of course are going to have my fingerprint smudges all over them. So I'll give it a quick wipe here. And there you have it. Very nice, well executed. Of course, at this point, this is something that is quite normalized, which is, a treat for us collectors and consumers, that you can see an execution of this level for, not in luxury pricing at all. I mean, this is more expensive, of course, for a micro brand, but in the grand scheme of things, definitely not necessarily an expensive wristwatch, especially considering that it is automatic and it does have, its own theme. This isn't something that is, a factory brand by any means. This is a brand that really has a rich history, and I think that's why it's been so popular. Is I think people do want to support, Irish micro brands and Irish watchmaking. Now, in terms of the crystal, you're going to get a flat sapphire with an inner anti-reflective coating. You're going to get a screw down crown that is nicely signed with that Nomadic N there. And then, as you see the case back here, which will pop open the clasp to get a better look, check that out. You actually get a very interesting, let me pop that, there we go. Yes, you get a very nice, let me wipe off that window there because it's got some smudges on it now. Of course, if this was your own watch, you wouldn't have to worry about that, but for the purposes of this video, check it out. You're getting a Sellita SW200 with that nice custom rotor, 41-hour power reserve beating at 4 hertz or 28,800 vibrations per hour in terms of that beat rate through that nice display window. And I think that's quite nice. It's not overly done. Again, this isn't, although they do have a reliable Swiss movement, this is a decidedly Irish timepiece. So, it doesn't need to necessarily have a bunch of perlage or anything like that. I do like the more utilitarian take on this. So, getting into the dial, it's going to be a lot more. Oh, let me give it another quick wipe. That's the tough thing I'd say about this piece, even though it is an adventure watch, right? It does have that polished bezel, which can pick up a lot. And in real life, you're not going to worry about it as much. But in terms of recording a video, taking photos, that's going to be something that's going to be playing off of the lighting at all times. And you know what? They're not the ones who invent this, so it's not like it's an inherent design flaw on their side. It is absolutely something that's been around for many, many years, and still prevalent on many Rolex timepieces, which this definitely channels a lot of that, as well as Tudor, which would be Rolex's sister brand. Now, the dial is a matte green dial with a printed index. There's no date. And another nice thing is with that no date, you're actually, with that Salida, you're going to have a no ghost crown position, which is great as well. You're also going to get really nice X1 grade BGW9 Superluminova. And with this screw down crown, you're also going to be getting a confidence inspiring 100 meters of water resistance. Additionally, you're going to have 20 millimeter lug width. You're going to get solid 3-link bracelets with quick release spring bars and a screw pin construction, very robust from that perspective. And then it's going to have a very nice taper from about 20 millimeters down to 16, and then 7.5 millimeters across this push button clasp with the 4 positions of toolless micro adjustment. There you go. And unfortunately for me, they don't really have any half links, so you do have to dial in the fit using the extension. I like to typically keep the extension exclusively to if your wrist swells and you can expand it, but sometimes to dial it in nicely, you're gonna have to use up a couple of clicks there, so you can get a little half distance versus the full distance on those links. So with that said, let's actually get it on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay, as you can see on my 7.5 inch wrist, or 19 centimeter circumference wrist, this wears really quite well. And although my wrist is on the larger side of average, it is also quite tall and round, so it's not like it's super wide, flat, and accommodating. So I do have to be, quite aware when it comes to the ultimate specifications, as well as just general overall proportions. Of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the camera lens, you're going to notice quite a bit of perspective distortion. It's going to make the watch seem a lot larger. Look at that. The sides of my wrist fall away, and thus the sides of the bracelet. Versus if I keep my wrist here, look at that. All of a sudden, the watch looks a lot more centered, and you're seeing the sides of my wrist, and then, of course, seeing the sides of the bracelet laying and draping across the wrist. So I'll leave my wrist there, and then just tighten up the frame here so that you guys can get still a detailed look, but just add a bit of a truer aspect ratio as how this may lay on your own wrist, and check that out. Very nice. Great profile there, and quite unique. Again, this isn't some parts bin special, which I can appreciate there. And I know that, many micro brands start from that space and then they work their way out of them. It's just the nature of the beast. There's going to be the high volume sellers versus the low volume stuff. And I like that, this brand has made it into some of the more niche and some of the more deliberate designs, so that now that they're able to, enjoy some of those economies of scale in terms of what they're able to execute with from a production standpoint. Now, yeah, I dig it. I mean, on paper, guys, you're getting pretty much everything, minus maybe a hard coating, which can be a positive for many, because a hard coating, once you mess it up, you can't reapply it. It might keep something more pristine initially, but then it can become a pain in terms of servicing and trying to keep looking good. Then you might have to remove all of that coating. So, it's not for everyone. So I can't say that it's an objective shortcoming, because for some people that could be a positive for them. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you feel like a hard coating would help this watch at all, especially considering its overall theme and kind of use case? So with that said, let's go ahead and get this off the wrist, set for some Lume shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Oh, check out that Lume. Very, very potent. And although not a dive watch, you are going to get a good amount of water resistance. And then, of course, it'd be a lot more confidence inspiring with that screw down crown. So you're going to ensure that your crown is pushed in and all of the seals and gaskets are engaged. Now, one thing I do like to work in is always going to be a bit of a low light transition because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So one thing you're already going to notice is, wow, that green doesn't necessarily pop in less than optimal lighting. So that's just to tell you that, hey, if you're not a huge green fan, the nice thing is you really, you have to be in the right situation for this green to really get out there. So it's a very subdued and restrained green, which I think will be really most people's preferences. I think it's kind of nice when you're going to get that dual dial where it's essentially in many situations is a black dial for all intents and purposes. And then, hey, in the right situation, then that green accent color really pops. And of course, that vibrant yellow is always going to play nicely off of that green background, or black, and often in less than optimal lighting. And of course, this isn't some complex finishing here, in terms of the design, whether it be the bracelet, very simple 3-link. If anything, you're going to have the niceties of a little bit of added angular geometry around, the case that really ties in, of course, to the overall design language, even down to those numerals and this choice of font type. So yeah, I think this is a good looking watch. You have the visibility and the legibility, which is great. And yeah, this is just giving me good vibes all around. So let's go ahead and get the lights back on and get into some closing thoughts, guys. On the wrist, nice Goldilocks sizing, giving modernized Tudor Ranger vibes. Yes, the Tudor Ranger, a watch that I want, but they still haven't really got it right because I feel like they go out of their way to make it not clean. Like they want it to be this vintage watch, so they put these kind of off-white color palettes, and I would just prefer a much cleaner execution. Something like this, very clean and sterile, and for me, infinitely more versatile. But let me know what you think in the comments on that. I know there's a lot of Tudor Ranger lovers out there, especially with that latest 36mm release. Now, in terms of model variants, do check the site links for current options and availability. They do have a black and white dial variation that look great. I wish I could have got my hands on one of those because they do have that very cool textured dial effect. But hey, maybe next time. In terms of comparable models, while the everyday adventure watch is super popular at the moment and the market is more competitive than ever, I think Nomadic's choice to equip the Turas with a proven Swiss powerplant does place this on the more expensive side of its typical microbrand competition, and that's to be expected. There are some great watches to be had for under $1,000, although this is just above $1,000 US. That are going to, and a lot of those watches have been featured on my channel, but I do understand, of course, for some people, a Swiss powered movement is going to be, obviously it's going to cost more for production, but even adding value on the other side, like for some people, that's what they need. It'll be a non-start on another watch what they find out it has a Seiko movement or a Citizen Miyota movement in there. So I understand that, and I get for some people that is a value add. So yeah, but again, curious your guys' thoughts on that. Does it make a big difference to you? It's not Swiss made. This is built in Belfast, so they could easily use a different type of movement, and I don't think it would really change your DNA too much. But I do think that there's definitely a constituent of collectors that still see the value in Swiss made. In terms of, at least at the movement level, being very robust, being pretty universal in terms of serviceability and being able to be regulated by, pretty much any watchmaker, even yourself. You know, I've been able, I just say regulate, but I've definitely done some time tuning on a couple of these movements, you know, these 28-24 based movements in the past. So for me, guys, bottom line, if you like the look, the product itself won't disappoint, but I do recognize that you kind of do have to have some extra appreciation for either the Nomadic branding and or their unique Irish heritage to reconcile the pricing premium in such a competitive field. Like in a bubble, in a vacuum, right? Like this versus mainstream, there's tons of value here. But now when you compare it to other micro brands, you have to decide, hey, am I big on US based micro brands? Am I big on Singaporean micro brands, right? Like wherever, or do I not care about branding at all and I just want to go get a factory, you know, piece, you know, from one of those brands that literally will just put a different logo on the same watch, as long as it has the specs. So for me, this, I think is a great example of a watch that isn't just about the specification. They do have their own vibe going on, and they have an aesthetic, and I like that. Yes, it does pay homage to the aesthetics of classics like Rolex and Tudor, but at the same time, I think they do enough differently to where you know, I see this having its own niche. It's not just a cheaper version of something desirable. They've created something desirable in their own right. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please do a like, and if you're already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.